This interview is being conducted for the Veterans History Project for the Library of Congress. The veterans' names are H.J. Lark and his son William Neal Lark Jr. So, yes, sir. H.J. Lark was born on April 14th, 1922 in Piedmont, South Carolina. He served in the Army Air Corps during World War II. He achieved the rank of First Lieutenant on March 1st, 2006. We are recording this on March 1st, 2016. His son was born on February 6, 1946 in Greenville, South Carolina. The U.S. Army, he served in the U.S. Army during the Vietnam era, and he received the rank of Lieutenant Colonel. My name is Nick Chiodo, and I'm conducting this interview. No relation. All right. So, thank you guys for being here. If we can, just start out, tell us what it was like for both of you, just what entering the service was like and the drafting was like.
What made you join the Army Air Corps? Why did you join the Army?
I don't know. I really don't know.
Did you have a interest in airplanes?
Well, yeah. Hell, that's been so long ago, I didn't keep it up here. And then I didn't have it written down.
See if that'll refresh your memory. You remember how old you were when you joined the Air Corps?
No, probably about 20.
Yeah. You had actually worked a while after high school before you joined the Air Corps, right? Did you work at Duke Power for a while?
I don't know.
Do you remember anything about the cadet training?
No. I really don't.
I remember you telling me about they made you eat square meals. You remember what a square meal was? Where you had to sit up straight and... You remember that?
No, I don't.
Well, I guess because he was a veteran, and I was his oldest son, of course I certainly had an appreciation for his service, and that probably influenced me.
Did he push you at all to go into the service?
He didn't press me. I mean, he let me make my own decision. He certainly supported it, but the idea actually was due to a high school guidance counselor.
Really?
Who, somehow learned about the military academy, and she was the one that approached the idea to me. And of course I talked with he and Mom. They were supportive of it, but I never felt any pressure to do it just to please him because he wanted to. He was wanted to let you make your own mind, your own way, and your own mistakes. So I did apply, and I did get accepted, and I went right after high school to the military academy.
And you said you went to West Point?
Yep. West Point, New York. We reported in the summertime. I think we had to report 1 July before the fall term started, and that first couple of months was kind of comparable to a basic training for another situation. I think the primary purpose was to try to weed out folks who weren't serious about, making it a career. So there was a lot of physical activity, physical training, shooting and hiking and camping and all of those military basic marching. And then of course the fall term started, and it was a 4-year bachelor degree producing the curriculum. The only difference was it was just in a military environment,
Right.
Uniforms and various military training and activities in addition to the academics. Of course, at the time I went in '64, it was male only.
Yeah.
And of course, since that time, they've admitted young ladies. I think they've begun to admit ladies in '76. Seemed like 1980 was the first graduating class that had female graduates. But nevertheless, I was an all-male environment, and you know, survived it. And upon graduation, of course, that education didn't cost anything.
Right.
It was, in fact, they actually paid you a little bit every month.
Like a stipend or something?
Right. For, you know, essentials, books and uniforms and toothpaste and whatnot.
Yeah.
But when you graduated, you were required to serve a minimum of 5 years active duty.
Yeah.
To kind of pay back.
Right.
For that free education. And so I was commissioned as a second lieutenant in the infantry.
Right.
And you remember when you came up to West Point for my graduation?
No.
You don't remember that? Everybody threw their caps up in the air. They were all there. And then I proceeded to serve active duty for 20 years.
20 years. Did you go in thinking that you would be like a career?
Well, I guess initially, say in high school when I applied, I hadn't really thought about it that much.
Right.
To be honest with you, in fact, I had, before I got accepted, I came to Clemson, put in an application, got accepted as fallback, you know, not knowing if I would get West Point or not. And so I guess I was just focused on the college education. I'm sure I read the material in terms of the military requirement, but I don't think it sunk into me that that was an option. But of course, as you progress through the 4 years, you know, you're around. Most of the instructors were active duty officers.
Right.
Not all had necessarily gone to West Point. A lot of them had, but some, in addition to instruction, you would get perspective from them about military career. So I'm sure by graduation I had begun to seriously think that, hey, this is not such a bad deal.
Right.
But of course, when I graduated in '68, you know, the Vietnam War was cranking up good.
Did that change like your opinion? Because thinking about combat as opposed to just
Right.
Yeah.
So I mean, I guess I was leaning toward it. I was impressed. I'm sure I felt it was a patriotic thing to do. But,
right.
You know, not so bad. I was getting good training.
Mm-hmm.
If I, you know, applied myself, I should be okay. And so, upon graduation, after getting married to a high school sweetheart, we went to Germany for the first assignment in the infantry unit. And actually was only there 1 year before they said it's time to go to Vietnam. So I left her in South Carolina. Didn't have any children at the time, and went to Vietnam, once again in an infantry unit.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'd only been there about 3 months and got shot and sent home.
Oh, really?
So my tour was cut short, and I spent a few weeks in a hospital in Japan, and then they sent me to a hospital down at Fort Jackson in Columbia.
Yep.
And I think they try to, unless you just need some specialized care, they try to place you in hospitals close to family.
Right.
You know. Anyway, I recuperated in several months, and by August I was back fit for duty, and we went to Fort Bragg, the 82nd Airborne Division.
Oh, yeah. I'm actually from
jumping out of airplanes. I ran into a fella yesterday that had been in the 82nd Airborne Division jumping out of airplanes like I did one time. He was a little bit younger. And we were sharing stories. And then from there, you know, the Army's policy is they move you about every 3 years.
Yeah.
What you won't do or not or change jobs. So we moved around a good bit in those early years. And I guess the next overseas tour, we went to a lot of stateside places, but the next overseas tour we went to Turkey,
Okay.
went to NATO headquarters, and we were there 2 years. And then came home from there, and somewhere, I guess in the very early 80s, we were assigned to the headquarters in Washington, D.C.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually ended up staying there 8 years. Now, I changed jobs about 3 times, but there's so much up there to choose from, then you can change jobs and not have to move your family. So we actually stayed there until I had finished 20 years, and at that time I decided to come home. I remember he came up for the retirement ceremony, I guess it would have been, and met the general I was working for at the time. Of course, the general was talking like, you know, he'd done a good job, wished he would stay, blah, blah, blah. And I remember him saying, "You've had him long enough, it's time for him to come home."
Right, right.
So we moved back to South Carolina, and then actually I went to work at Tri-County Technical College.
Yes.
In Pendleton.
Yep.
In fact, that's where I first met Ruthie, actually. Anyway, worked there for 20 years and retired, and now I'm fully retired.
That's not bad at all.
But you know, I got good training all the way through that prepared me for whatever the Army wanted me to do. And you know, I never really regretted. I still don't regret the time I spent in the Army. Met a lot of good people. And still stay in touch with some of them today. Thanks to Facebook.
Right, you really?
Yeah. So like I say, I've got good memories.
That's so. When you talk about the training, you said you don't regret. So was the training ever tough? It sounds like you enjoyed the.
Oh yeah.
Kind of,
well, I guess just like in any basic training, any service, Army or whatever, they say they tear you down and build you back
up the way they want you.
So,
yeah.
So they, some people call it brainwash, but you know, I mean, that's the purpose is so you'll be prepared to do what you have to do. I've told several people probably the one course of training that, in my opinion, paid off the most. In other words, benefited me the most. And there were a lot of them that had good benefit, but right after graduating from West Point and before I went to the first assignment, because I was in the infantry, I went to Ranger training. And it was kind of a survival environment to try to prepare you to lead small units in combat kind of conditions. And so it was tough by intention. They didn't give you a whole lot to eat, and you know, forced you physically, you know, beyond exhaustion, so you would, you know, be tested on making decisions under stress and you know, all that stuff. And I really think the training that I got in that course, even though I did get shot, it saved my life in Vietnam because, you know, I was prepared for intense situations and survival situations, and anyway, that was a very intense period of training. But and of course, at the time, I'm sure I complained a lot. Wondered why in the world I was having to do that. But when it was all over and done, especially when I realized, you know, what it prepared me to do, I was certainly grateful. For that. I also went through airborne training and jumped out of airplanes, and that's not for everybody. But I think once again, that was a kind of training that made you understand the importance of little things and not make a mistake and following the procedure and the rules, and And so I, when I later joined the 82nd Airborne Division at Fort Bragg and jumped out of airplanes, so
Right.
I was prepared for it, and I mean, I'm sure I enjoyed it. Probably some people maybe have enjoyed it more than I, but I certainly wasn't fearful and didn't resist or try to avoid it. It was something that we had to do constantly, so that should we be called on to deploy as an airborne unit, we'd be ready. And never did, but with an awful lot of training, we continued to jump and have training exercises that involved jumping and dropping equipment and all that sort of thing.
So I'm actually from Fayetteville, so that's really interesting.
Okay, small world.
Yeah, so I know about they even call it Fayette now.
Yeah, they did back then. I didn't realize they still called it that.
They do.
It's probably changed an awful lot. We were there from 70 to 73, and I'm trying to think. I don't think we've been back. I really don't think we've been back even to visit. So I'm sure, like every place, it's changed a lot.
It seems like it changed. I mean, I've just grown up there, in the 20 years I've seen it, it's changed in each I've seen. But so do you think that had you ever been? I mean, like, was flying flying and like jumping out of planes? Is that you kind of excited about that or something?
Oh sure, it's an adrenaline rush.
Right.
In fact, I run into this fella just this week actually. That had been at Fort Bragg, and I was talking about the types of airplanes I jumped out of, and he mentioned that he had jumped out of similar ones. We were comparing stories about, when they open that door, it gets kind of noisy, it gets your attention, and but like I say, prior to then, you've gone through training and repetitively done things till it's almost automatic, and so. It's a good feeling to know that parachute opens just for safety, but it's also a good feeling to know that you've...
Right.
Hey, Miss Ruthie.
Hey, y'all.
Hi.
We're underway.
I couldn't let y'all have all the fun.
No.
We're talking about jumping out of airplanes.
Yep.
Well, I don't want to interrupt, but I just wanted to say hello and see how y'all were doing, and so...
Think we're doing what?
Sorry, Library of Congress.
No, you're absolutely
No
fine.
problem. But I do want to get a picture of all y'all.
It's Facebook.
Exactly. I am all about the social media. So
You want us to get together?
Yeah, come
Yes,
over there.
yes.
All right. Shoot, I can get.
Do you want to pause this or?
Yes, ma'am.
That way.
Can I pause it?
I don't know.
I'm actually not sure. We can edit it out.
Okay.
If we need to.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, we can.
Want me to get in between them, or? Is this
Yeah. Can
good?
you skip? Let's see.
Get in. It doesn't
Or
matter.
let's see. Yeah, right there. So that way we can see HJ's Liberator hat.
There we go.
Yes. Perfect. There we go. We gotta get the boss in the picture. Get HJ, and I want to do it with the tiger in the background.
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah. Super. Got it. Got it.
All right.
Thank you so much. You know what I told Nick? I said, be careful when HJ shakes your hand, because he's got one grip on him that'll break your hand.
You do have a firm grip. That's my dad always taught me.
Yes, always have a firm grip. So, well, I'm going to leave y'all be, and y'all,
Thanks again.
Sounds
thank
good.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
So HJ, did you ever jump out of planes too, or are you always flying them?
You never did jump out of an airplane, did you?
Never what?
Did you ever parachute out of an airplane?
No.
Nah.
You recognize that picture?
Yeah, that's the whole bunch.
Yep, that's your crew. How many officers were in the crew?
How many what?
Officers. Officers.
Here?
Yeah.
4,
4 officers.
4 and 6.
4 and 6. Okay. What did those 6 enlisted men do? What were their jobs?
Well, it'd be one in the nose, one in the back behind the cockpit, and
Look on that and see if that helps
see
you.
the tail.
And the tail.
That's hard to study.
What about the sides? Did they have any on either side? Like, was there a door somewhere in here?
And those were gunners, right? Were they gunners?
Gunners, right.
Right.
There's one of them. Is that what they look like? Shoot those machine guns.
Yeah.
Did they ever have to shoot down the enemy?
Those.
Do you remember
this?
Even if it's just to laugh at my singing,
Do you remember the Tuskegee Airmen?
No.
The black fighter pilots.
Yeah.
Tell Nick about the Tuskegee Airmen. What was their job?
I'll be damned. I don't know.
They were fighter pilots. Didn't they fly along with you to protect you?
I guess they did.
I ain't got a picture of them, but they were all black, all African American
Right.
troop. Because I guess the services weren't integrated at the time.
Right.
But he told me once upon a time that they were small fighter planes, and they'd protect the bombers from enemy
right, trying to shoot
fighters.
down.
And he said for every flight of bombers that the Tuskegee Airmen flew in support of, they never lost a single bomber.
No.
That's what it said. It said he had a reputation. He used to be a part of some veterans organization. They called them the Red Tails because I guess they painted the tail on their fighter red,
Right.
so you could recognize them. But they had a good reputation for protecting the bombers, and I'm sure that the other fighters didn't have as good a record as much as they were bragged about.
Right.
So a total of 10, 4 and 6. You got it? You remember you got your crew together about 10 years ago. You had a reunion. You met out in Texas, and those that were still alive, y'all met and had a little reunion of your crew. You tracked them down. I think maybe 1 or 2 had died by then, but you found most of them.
I don't remember that.
You had somewhere out in Texas. It might have been close to where some of them live. Seemed like some were on the West Coast and some were on the East Coast. And they had a good time getting reconnected.
That's awesome.
Compared where all their lives had taken them since the war.
Do you do that? Do you find yourself? Do you meet up again, reunion with the people you served with?
Well, the reunions that I have attended have really been West Point graduating class reunions.
Gotcha.
And to be honest with you, because the Army moved us around so much, it was hard to stay in one place long enough to make lasting, friendships. Although there are several organizations like the 82nd Airborne that will have a reunion, and if you were ever in it, you could go.
Right.
And I've never done that. Just like I say, I was closer to the West Point class. In fact, my West Point class is having, let's see, this is 2016. 2018, we'll have our 50th
Oh my goodness.
reunion.
That's awesome.
But this fall, we're having a special, and all the previous reunions have been at the academy. We go up, you know, during the football weekend.
Yeah.
Stay off at a hotel and get reconnected. But anyway, this fall, in October, we're going down to Fort Benning, Georgia
Yeah.
for kind of an off-cycle reunion. And there's a fairly new infantry museum, and there's a place where you can dedicate some sort of monument or memorial. And we're going to do that to those members in our class who were in the infantry and were deceased.
Right.
So we're looking forward to that. We'll see some folks. So yeah, I've enjoyed the reunions because we do get scattered. You know, we came from probably all of the 50 states, because each state, well, each representative, each congressman could appoint so many. I think senators maybe had a couple, and representatives had a couple, seemed like the president. So they were, you know, they were scattered from every state. And so once we got out, you know, like I came home, they didn't all go back home, but a lot of them did, or wherever they were last assigned, you know, they stayed wherever they were. So it's always good to reconnect and find out what everybody's been doing. I was telling you that day that I was wounded, we were basically pinned down. I was a platoon leader, had about 30 some odd guys, and we were pinned down, and I was wounded, and so had to call for help.
Right.
And so a buddy of mine, he was a platoon leader in another platoon off in another part, and he got the word, so he brought his men over and helped us out and pulled us out. And so I got sent home since I was wounded, and he stayed. He hadn't finished his tour, of course. And then, of course, I proceeded to be assigned different places all over. And he actually had been drafted and then became an officer. And he decided to get out after his time was up and went back to his former civilian job up in Washington State. So we really lost touch.
Yeah.
And about 3 or 4 years ago, not long after Facebook came out, this long story short, I said, I'm wondering, I still have his name. I plugged him in and found him on Facebook.
Okay.
And we've since been out to visit with his wife and his children. And of course, we still correspond quite frequently with Facebook. That makes it easier to keep up with what's going on. And then, of course, I do that with classmates, people that I knew even longer than this fella. But, you know, that's a neat thing to stay in touch with folks who have a shared common experience. And see what, you know, where the life took them.
So when you were saying that, like when you first went to Germany, so was that for like more training, or was that for just being on base, or? No,
I was assigned to what they call a mechanized infantry unit.
Okay.
They had armored vehicles that carried the infantrymen, and at that time, of course, it was still kind of early in the Vietnam War, but prior to that time, ever since the conclusion of World War II, the Army kept quite a few units in Germany. To keep the Russians from taking over.
Makes sense.
So it was actual combat units.
Okay.
Now, of course, they did train to be ready.
Yeah.
You know, things were ever needed to defend Germany. So it was a regular infantry unit, and we would go through training exercises and have orders of where to go if, you know, we were needed. And actually, I was due to have been there 3 years. That was a typical assignment pattern, but because Vietnam was kind of heating up, I got, you know, sidetracked to go over there. So every assignment after that was either with a unit that had a mission, like the 82nd. You know, at the time, their mission was to, you know, go anywhere in the world on a spur of the moment kind of thing and drop in and take care of things. So we would train for that mission. Now, after I left the 82nd, that was probably my last, what I'll call, combat troop unit. And by that time, I guess when I left there, either captain or major. Then I began to pull assignments in either headquarters, staff. Like one time I pulled an assignment in recruiting command, so we were involved with trying to, this was before the volunteer army, we were involved in recruiting young men and women to come into the military. And then I worked for one 3-year period in the Pentagon, and a couple of other units in Washington. Those were mostly what I call staff positions, where you would do budget and plans and things to support the combat units throughout the Army. Trying to think of what else we can.
Now, you told me that HJ was the first time he had seen the ocean was when he was flying over there. Is that true?
Yeah.
Is it?
Talk to Nick about what that means. What does all that mean?
Had you ever seen the ocean before?
Yeah.
Started off somewhere in the United States, down to South America, over to Africa, and out to Italy. Is that when you finally went to war?
Yeah.
When you took off over here, did you have your full crew?
Yeah.
On day one, did you know where you were going?
You know what?
Did you know what your final destination was?
I don't remember.
I thought something was said about you had a set of sealed orders and you couldn't open them until you got out over the ocean. You remember that?
No.
Do you remember if you landed anywhere along that route, or was it non-stop?
I think each one of these was stopped.
Okay, okay. Probably about right. So that bomber probably wouldn't carry enough fuel to go otherwise.
That was all one. That was one trip.
Okay,
And then each one of these was a trip.
okay. You never had been outside the United States before, had you?
No, I don't think so.
Whenever you made a stop like that, did you have a hard time keeping your crew together, or did they run off and want to chase the local girls? I'm glad you did that. Now we can know.
Yeah.
That's when he took off. He finished his training, got his crew,
Mm-hmm.
and he took off and ended up in Italy.
Right.
And then from Italy. All right, what's all of that mean?
That's where you got shot at.
That wasn't any fun, was it?
The red ones was shot at.
Okay. There's an awful lot of red ones there.
Yeah.
You spend a lot of time over here.
Yeah.
Is that where the oil refinery was?
Yeah.
Ploiesti.
What was the name of it?
Ploiesti.
Oh.
See there?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Why did they call it black ployesti?
I'll be damn proud
I heard, one thing I heard was, if they thought the bombers was coming, they would start burning some of that oil to make black smoke so you couldn't see your target.
Yeah.
Plus the anti-aircraft fire, the smoke from that made it black too, didn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Long time ago, huh?
Yeah.
Wow.
He flew all of his missions out of Lecce.
Oh, all of them left. He came
He
back.
was in the same place. And I looked it up. He was in what was called the 15th Air Force.
Okay.
There was another Air Force group called the 8th, and they were out of England and Northern Europe. The 15th was headquartered down in here. He was in the 47th Wing, the 98th Bomb Group, remember that one? And the 415th Bomber Squadron.
Oh my goodness.
And I really don't know how many planes were in each squadron or the group or whatever. I'm sure we could research it, but I'm sure he was most familiar with his little small group in the squadron, that maybe say a dozen or so.
Right.
They would all fly together on a mission. He would tell me that they'd get up of a morning and go to the, I guess they called it the ready room, and it'd be a board, I guess with targets and some sort of indication of which squadron was going to which target. So they might not know until the morning of where they'd be flying that day. But they knew how to get there. I got your logbook. Do you remember why you wrote that right there?
No, I don't.
Something about somebody failed you on a check flight. It was during training. You remember Zimmerman?
No.
He supposed he was a real hard flight instructor, and he flunked you out that day. But you got to go back the next day for a second chance, and you passed. He used to be able to remember stuff, but
To hell and back, though.
Yeah.
Is that what it's?
the way, if he had it all, I'm sure he did. At the back of the book, there's no real explanation. But the way I interpret it, he added up the bomb load of his whole combat career. And the way I read it, he delivered 21 1,000-pound bombs, 231 500-pound bombs, 10 500-pound incendiary clusters, that's the burn stuff, 38 250-pound bombs, 120 100 fragmentation clusters. And that's what it busted apart little pieces, probably for anti-personnel.
Yeah.
And so that added up, he added that up to a total payload of 163,000 pounds of bombs. And in addition to that, he dropped 10 500-pound bombs in the ocean. Why did you drop those bombs in the ocean?
Ah, damn fun though.
I think you couldn't see the target, and you couldn't drop them on the target, and you couldn't land with them back home. It'd too dangerous. So I think you just dumped them in the ocean for safety. Anyway.
Yeah. Wow.
162,000 pounds of bombs.
That's a lot.
That's one airplane.
That's some.
Uh,
Oh
But this Gladstone in his book, he bombed things like bridges, ordnance depot, airdrome, I don't know what an airdrome is, gun positions along the coast, oil pumping station, assembly plant, like aircraft assembly plant, oil refinery, lumber mill, a lumber mill, a dock, a submarine pen and dock.
wow.
And where was that? Toulon, France. A lot of oil refinery runs. Another aircraft factory. Anyway,
That's
looks like most of it was the refinery and aircraft factories.
right. And a lot of them, they were over a huge, just expansive. I mean, different kind of countries and where Germany and Italy occupied at the time, which is crazy. So you would always fly back to Italy. Yeah, yeah. Oh man. Did you ever get off and you ever go around Italy when you were at base? Yeah.
Do you remember the time you visited your brother Will was in the Navy?
Yeah.
His oldest brother Will, who eventually told him about the GI Bill.
Right.
Will was in the Navy, and his ship was docked somewhere in Italy. Don't remember if it was Rome or somewhere. He was in a dock for. Somehow they communicated, I guess, by mail.
That's nuts.
And he, I guess, got a day or two off. I remember them talking about it. He stayed a night or two on Will's ship. I'm sure they did a little sightseeing or whatever. I remember him talking about that. I guess that was probably, he was one of 8, and I believe Will was a little older, about the same age. I think they were probably the closest of the siblings. Okay, what else you got?
Well, what was it for you when you were talking about, so was the most combat you saw, was that in Vietnam when you were a platoon leader?
Yeah, that was the only time I was in combat.
You were in combat. Now, did you, like, what was I guess your perspective going into it? Just because, you know, I've only heard about what people were saying, you know, in the country, but, you know, what was going on in Vietnam. What were you, like, going into it, what was your mindset, I guess?
Well, I went there in 1970, and in fact, while I was there, let's say it could have been May of 1970, by that time there had begun to be a good bit of public opposition back in the States.
Right.
And in fact, I don't know if you ever read or studied about the Kent State University issue where some students were protesting, the National Guard was called to kind of control the crowd, and there were some shots fired and some students killed. That happened while I was in Vietnam, and we didn't get the nightly news. I mean, we didn't really know what was going on. So, and then before that, I was in Germany, and I'm sure we got a fair amount of news, but we didn't watch the nightly news every night over in Germany. So, said all that to say, by the time I got to Vietnam, I don't think I was intensely aware of the public opposition. You know, like people who were here, and of course, seated on the news. So, you know, I just thought I was there to do a job.
Right.
The commander-in-chief says go do it, and, you know, I was trying to do the best I could. A typical infantry platoon environment at the time, we would have like a little safe base that we would come back to rest a little while, get a hot meal, maybe take a shower, but then we would reload ammunition and food and water, and then we'd go out in the jungle and hunt the bad guys for, say, a week or so.
So you really, like, I've only seen, I mean, the movies, but, like, were you trying to push forward? You're trying to go through, like, dense vegetation, and that's, like, your goal is to, like, go through
Find, search and destroy, they call it.
Okay, that's what you're
Sometimes we walked, a lot of times we went by helicopter.
Okay,
Vietnam was kind of the first use of helicopters to that extent to move troops around.
Yeah.
Of course, it beat walking the whole time, and they were very handy to get out, you know, if you were ready to come home or if you were in trouble and needed to get out quickly. So we would load up on helicopters and go to a point and then either set up ambush sites or follow trails to find the bad guy or look for, you know, ammunition depots or food depots or, you know, hospitals and try to destroy them. You know, while trying to keep them from ambushing us or attacking us or, you know, doing us harm. And so typically a platoon was the smallest unit that was out by itself, and it was supposed to be 44 men, but nobody was full strength, so it was about 30.
30, wow.
And you know, I might be over here with mine, and maybe a couple of miles away would be my buddy with his, and you know, we were in the same general area, but we weren't, you know, right on top of each other. And then after I'd been there for a couple of months, the president approved going into Cambodia. And the significance of that was, up until that time, the North Vietnamese used Cambodia as a safe base.
They could retreat there and
they'd come down and run across the border and, you know, kill some people and go back over because they knew politically we wouldn't follow them.
Right.
You know, Cambodia. I mean, they weren't supporting them per se, but they just bullied their way and used that to their advantage. They would establish that they'd bring ammunition down from the north and stockpile it on the Cambodia side of the border,
right, so
be closer to where they needed it in South Vietnam. But in May of '70, after I'm sure a lot of back and forth politically, they said, "All right, go get them."
Yeah,
it's not fair. So that's actually where I was when I was shot. And we really only stayed over there probably a month or less.
Wow.
And there's statistics out about how much ammunition was destroyed, how many weapons, how many vehicles. I mean, they really had built up. You know, that was just kind of their base.
Right.
Because they could let their guard down, so to speak.
Because
they thought, I knew they were safe for a while. But like I say, I was a lot luckier than typically a tour in Vietnam at that time was 12 months.
Wow.
And most folk, after about 6, they got a break of a couple of weeks. They called it R&R, rest and relaxation. And you could either go in country to one of the beaches, or a lot of guys would go to Hawaii and meet their wives. But I didn't stay long enough for that. Right. Since I was only there about 3 months. But the only guy I lost in my platoon was the day I got shot. My medic came to take first aid on me. I was laying there, and he just didn't get low enough, and he got shot and was killed right there on top of me. And of course, his name, I don't know if you're familiar with the Vietnam Wall in Washington, where 58 some odd thousand names of all the people that were killed. Of course, Corporal Wheatley's name's there, and I always, if I'm in town, I always go by. In fact, Dad's been to see it. He may not remember it, but well, while we lived up there, during his visits, we'd go out. Right. But you know, there was a lot. Like I said, almost 60,000 lost their lives, and prisoners of war and missing. Yeah. Of course, it's, you know, today, in part due because of how they've reduced the size of the military, those young men and women who are going back and forth to Iraq and Afghanistan and, you know, all those other bad places. I mean, I've got he wasn't a classmate. He graduated a couple years ahead of me at West Point. He's got a son who's I think a lieutenant colonel in the Army. So he's probably been in, I'm thinking maybe right at 20 years. That young fellow's already been to either Iraq or Afghanistan 8 different times.
Oh my goodness.
They're just back and forth.
And so instead of, you can't have as big of a rotation, so they're doing more.
Yeah, because it's just not enough people to spread it around.
Right.
I mean, in terms, if you had more people, then you could spend less time in the combat zone. And so I said that to say, you know, I felt I had it hard, but I just can't imagine today what the young soldiers are going through with that kind of rotation. And then of course there's, you know, we were in danger, but I don't remember as many disfigured veterans from the booby traps, I guess you call it,
right.
IEDs they call them today, that the current generation is having. It's just phenomenal.
Yeah.
The type of wounds our
Yeah.
soldiers are getting today. I mean, I was very lucky. It left no disability. It got me home early. You know, I mean, I just, like I say, my heart goes out some, and you see pictures of folks missing limbs and just totally disfigured. It's really, really tough. I remember Dad telling the story that one of the bombing runs, and I don't know if he knew at the time if it was a round from an enemy fighter shooting at him, or if it was a piece of flak from a, you know, that shooting an aircraft gun. Anyway, I don't think he realized it at the time. He got back to the base and he had draped his leather jacket over his back of his seat, and he went to get it, and there was a hole in it, and the piece of shrapnel was still embedded. I guess it had been that close to him. And he held on to that for years. I think he finally lost it. You remember when that piece of shrapnel lodged in your jacket after one of your bombing runs?
No.
You held on to that for a long time. It's a souvenir, but I think you finally lost it.
I had read a book recently just about, I guess it was actually a poem, but about a guy who was in the belly gunner. He was saying what it was, I mean, being shot at, but the black flak he called it, and how just, you know, it was so cold as you went up in the altitude and coming down and everything was going on, and how crazy that must have been, with people shooting at you, trying to fly, you know.
Think about those, the B-24, the U.S. made more of that model airplane than has ever been made before or since of a single model.
Oh my
There's more B-24s made than any other model of airplane ever made. And of course, what, 60 years ago, whatever it was, you know, the technology was not like what it is today in terms of electronics and hydraulics. I mean, a lot of it was just brute force.
Right.
You know, but you had some cables and wires and some things to steer. So
no power steering on that.
Took a stout man to keep that airplane in the air, didn't it?
I can't imagine that. Did he ever did he when he returned home, did he talk? I mean, I guess were you born at the time or afterwards?
No, he didn't marry mom until he came back from war. But even in my growing up years, he never talked much about it.
He didn't.
And I'm not sure that I do either. I mean, I guess some of it is we're just doing our job thing. Some of it may be macho. You're not gonna, you know, whine and cry about it. But we, you know, different ones would ask questions, especially as children got old enough. And then you hang around, you know, family gatherings, and like I say, it was he and two other brothers. He had two brothers in the Navy, and sometimes they'd get to talking, you know, kind of listen. But as far as an everyday conversation, it was rare. Yeah. It was rare. He just, you know, he got back here and went back to work and supported his family and did his thing for Deep Power for almost 40 years, and then he retired. He went to reunions for a while, but it's been a long time. I mean, you know, big, like 98 bomb group.
Big.
In addition to that little one of his crew, but I'm sure it's been probably 15, 20 years since he's even done some of that. You know, they're dying at a rate of probably 1,000 a day. I don't know, but we're losing.
I mean, Now, did he ever talk about, like, because, you know, like, who he was fighting, you know, with Germans? Did he ever talk about, or like say, you know, like, because, you know, you always, I guess in the military, I've never been in the military, but just like talking about the enemy, is that just something like a job, you have an objective to get done, or do you have like a feeling like when you were in Vietnam, like, you know, who you were going up and protecting yourself from or attacking, like what was your, I guess, idea of like you're going forward, like I'm gonna get these guys, or if they're just another thing to get to?
Well, I'm sure to a certain extent I was brainwashed. You know, I mean, I was of the opinion that that was a threat to democracy.
Right.
These communists. I mean, the Chinese were supporting the North Vietnamese, and the North Vietnamese were oppressing the South Vietnamese. So I think I saw it as a fight for freedom.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've often wondered, I've never heard him say, but tried to envision, you know, a bomber. You're way up high. You
Right.
don't
Kind of
separate. Certainly don't see people.
Right.
And probably the bombardier, looking through the bomb sights, the only one that even sees the target,
Right.
per se. I'm sure that detachment made it hard to have a real understanding about the human impact. But you know, the infantry on the ground certainly was a different environment. Yeah, so sometimes face to face, sometimes shadows or fleeting glimpses. Sometimes just shots not knowing where they came from, but you know, it's close.
Yeah, that's.
But I think most of the, in spite of the opposition back home, and most of the soldiers that I was exposed to, you know, had a positive attitude. I mean, they were there. Some of them might not have been their first choice of something to do, but you know, they were there. They knew they had about 12 months to do the job and hopefully get home.
Right.
But even back then, you'd had folks who, for whatever reason, they'd come back, stay a little while, volunteer to go back. I mean, you hear people going to Vietnam for free tours, and you know, that's how strong they felt about it.
Right.
But anyway, it was a variety. Of course, once again, there were cross section from all over. It was in the draft era.
Right.
So we had some folks who, you know, didn't appreciate the fact they were drafted. But like I said, I never had any problem with behavior or refusal to, you know, I mean, like when an infantry platoon treks through the jungle, you got a guy way out front, called a point man, you know, to be on the lookout so you don't walk into a trap.
And then you all get. Yeah.
And so, you know, my philosophy was you kind of rotate that position because it's high exposure.
Right.
And then you kind of get to know the men and find out who would be the best one. There might be somebody just because of either fear or bad eyesight or, you know, something that would make a good candidate. Mm-hmm. So it narrows down, but I never had anybody refuse to walk point.
Right.
Or do anything else that they were supposed to do. And so to me, while most of them were probably draftees, it was just, once again, I think a testament to their patriotism and willingness to do what had to be done. And then, you know, most, if not all, came home to a society that, you know, kind of blamed them for some political things that were going on. And you know, in a sense, it wasn't fair. I mean, I never received any, you know, threats or criticism, just luck of the draw where I was. But I'm sure a lot of people did in terms of how they had readjusted back to life after the Army.
Yeah, it was just I'd heard stories how dangerous it was during Vietnam. I had a friend whose father was in Vietnam. He was telling me that that where he was, I guess, dropped in, or that he was a Marine, and when he got the life expectancy for a Marine that was dropped in this area was like 20 minutes. And I was like, that doesn't even make sense. Why would you be dropping people in there? And I couldn't even imagine.
Well, there were some hot spots. That's probably true. And you're right. Just like today, you hear these stories of SEALs. A SEAL got a Medal of the Honor just this week.
Yeah.
And I hadn't heard of him until they read his story. I mean, they were actually rescuing a civilian medical doctor, I think, who'd been held by the Taliban somebody. And, you know, the things he did to bust in that building and shield the guy and take care of business. I mean, he basically said, you know, he feels that's what he's supposed to do.
Yeah. So.
It's not for everybody, but I'm glad we do have people that
Yeah.
are willing to do that so that we can enjoy our freedoms.
Absolutely. Now, you said about like coming back and readjusting back to civilian life. Did your dad ever talk about HJ? Did you ever like when you came out of the service and you came back? Did you just did you put like your service in the past, or you just start working and what was it like after you came back from the war?
Did you ever have nightmares about the war?
If I did, I don't remember it. I'm sure I had one, but I don't remember it.
I think, I don't know that he went back to the same location of Duke Power, but he certainly had the advantage of, one, having a job, and two,
Right.
with a company he was familiar with.
Right.
And then, like I say, he didn't work any time. It was probably less than a year before he got into school to finish his degree.
Oh, that's right. You said that after he came back, part of the GI Bill.
Right.
His brother told him about the GI Bill, and he went to Clemson. And
In fact, he was an honor graduate.
Oh, wow.
In electrical engineering, top 5th of the class, Tau Beta. What was that? Honor you got when you graduated? Tau Beta Pi? Engineering Honor Society or something like that. I read something somewhere. He was in the top 5th of the class.
Nice.
Of course, and I don't think that was uncommon for veterans because they were one more mature.
Yeah.
They were focused.
Yeah.
And you know they appreciated the fact that they were not paying much. In fact, I'm sure the tuition and probably even a little living money was covered. So for the most part, they wanted to do good, and there was a time when he still remembered and talked about some of his professors, and I don't know if you're familiar with the Botanical Garden.
Yes. Yes.
Maybe class 39 or something. They got that bell and all those images of cadet life, and they've got pavers where people donate money to build it, and you could do it in honor or memory of a person, and then put that person's name on it. We were there walking around not that long ago, and you came upon a name. I think it was Lane, John Lane. As soon as he saw it, that was the best teacher I ever had.
No
I
kidding.
said, really? I said, what did John Lane teach you? English. I don't know if he remembers it now or not, but he remembered it then. And of course, because he appreciated his education so much, let's see, he finished in 50. I would have been 4, I guess. And then he, of course, went back to work. And by the time I got into grade school where I had homework and math problems and that sort of thing, I still remember come home from school, do my homework. When he came home from work, I had to give him homework for him to check it.
Really?
In math, he'd look at the sheet and say 25 problems or something, whatever it was. He'd look at it, he'd hand it back and said, you got 3 wrong, find them and correct them.
Find them and correct them?
He
He wouldn't tell you which one?
He wouldn't tell me which one was wrong, so I had to go over every single one. You remember that? When I was a young kid in elementary school, and you would check my homework, you'd look at my arithmetic, and you'd say, you got 3 wrong, find them and correct them. You wouldn't tell me which ones was wrong, I had to find them. Maybe that's why I wasn't perfect in math, but I was better in math than a lot of things, so maybe that's why.
Yeah. Did you when you came back? You were serving in D.C. for a while, so come back with civilian life. Was that not hard to transition?
Out of Vietnam, let's see. Yeah, Vietnam, I went to the 82nd Airborne, so it was a troop unit.
Right.
So, I mean, you know, I don't remember a lot of protesters around Fort Bragg. I mean, it was a big place, and of course we were busy. We lived on base. We didn't have a whole lot of, it was just my wife and I at the time, didn't have a whole lot of interaction with the off-base community.
Right.
You know, you got the commissary, the PX,
You got
and the
everything you need
hospital,
on
and,
base, yeah.
you know, and I'm sure there were probably some protesters, but I never encountered that. You know, I was with a unit that stayed busy every day. And then by the time I was discharged from the military in 1980, I mean, Vietnam was over.
Yeah.
We hadn't gotten into some of the other
The Cold War.
issues. And so I had a smooth transition, and I felt like all my experiences in the military helped me. I did a little teaching at Tri-County, and basically got into administration and that sort of thing. So it was not a lot different than some of those latter Army assignments where you're in the staff position of some office doing projects and whatever.
No.
What's Nicole up to? She must be wanting you to go out and party.
Yeah, I know.
He likes to go. Like I said, I wasn't old enough to be aware, but I think just what I've read about the World War II is a whole different ballgame.
Yeah.
The population, the nation, was extremely appreciative of what all those guys did. I mean, there were parades, and they'd wear, in fact, when you got married, he wore his uniform. I don't think I brought a picture of he and Mom, but it really wasn't until Vietnam that things had begun to shift in the country in terms of respect for military and that sort of thing. He had a very easy transition, best I could tell from what I learned later.
Well, that is awesome. Well, I really appreciate
Sure.
both you guys' service. First of all, for your interview, and then for you guys' service and your stories, because
I appreciate it.
I mean, personally, I love hearing about this stuff, and but also just for the future, for the Library of Congress and stuff. So, thank you very much.
Oh, you're very welcome.
Thank you very
You're
much.
welcome.
Thank you, HK. Thank you. That was a good handshake, sir.
Yeah, you still got it, Daddy.